So Ryan, are those all your own paintings behind you?
Yeah, these
When
are a little bit of them. Yeah.
we got
Cool.
we got a tour.
Head out.
Yeah, we got a tour before you jumped on, so.
Oh, I'm sorry. Like I said, I had to put on my makeup. A different kind of painting.
An important kind of painting.
Yes, I think so.
I thought it would always be fun to go into kind of like a makeup artist.
Like what's her name? Who did Lion King and all of that?
Oh, well, that's really remarkable.
Yes.
Oh, I still picture the Miss Doubtfire, right?
Yeah.
The brother, yeah.
Yep.
So good.
Yeah, Lena, are your kids old enough for Miss Doubtfire?
No,
Soon.
they're still too little for that. I thought you were gonna say, are they old enough for
For
makeup?
makeup, that's what I thought too.
No, not either.
But how many people are in the waiting room, Melissa?
6 attendees so far.
6?
They're gonna get every question answered they ever wanted.
Mm.
Can you guys give me a preview of what your opinion is in terms of filing new DACAs right at this point?
My opinion is theoretically we should be able to, but I don't think USCIS is processing them yet.
Are they would they return them? Who knows?
I don't know that we know yet whether they have been returned. Like I don't.
I think we do. Someone posted on our listserv that said theirs was returned. Now we don't know if it was just returned for a filing error or something like that, or if it was returned. We don't know why it was returned, but a new DACA.
I thought that it was that the listserv was just saying that they weren't accepting them. So I'm not sure whether it was actually physically returned. Did you?
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, hard to say.
Theoretically, we should be able to.
Yes,
Mm.
but
I do.
what I'm doing, Charo, is we're calling all our people who, not that there's that many, but who would be eligible for a new DACA. And we're telling them if they want, us to start, get all the applications ready. If they want to pay for that, we don't charge very much to do DACAs, and pay the fee. We'll get it ready and be ready to send it in. If they want to, the only thing they're losing really is their money,
Right.
theoretically, especially if they don't have a removal order.
Right.
And I strongly recommend that people get ready to do it if there's a short window, like there was. At some point there was a short window. Yeah, so that's what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the question of, if why not just send it in and let them send it back?
Because if you have a removal order, then are you possibly triggering a visit to your house?
Well, I think all of those, like,
Right.
I'll just call them special issues,
Yes.
are things to meditate over. But I guess the concern about sending it in is, could they end up just sitting in a non-processed pile when you got to wait till the starting gate opens, and then then you decide, do I file a second one with the first one that might be sitting there? But
Yeah.
I think people can disagree. Some people say, like, wait till USCIS issues some sort of formal guidance about whether or not they're accepting them. Some people have a more aggressive stance where they say, I'm not waiting for USCIS to tell me anything. I'm going to submit it because we should essentially be back in 2012 and we should be able to submit it. So
Yeah. I mean, if you send the check and they don't cash the check, then you lose nothing, right?
Correct.
If they cash the check, then you have some proof that they received it and they accepted it. So you can always, exercise some priority, presumably. But I would send it with a check. I wouldn't send a money order or a credit card, I guess. Do they accept credit cards now? I'm not sure.
No.
No.
For certain applications, but not for DACA.
Yeah, we don't do credit cards
No
for
credit cards,
DACA.
yeah.
Okay, I think we should begin.
Okay.
All right. All right, good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us on this webinar to speak about the Supreme Court's recent decision on DACA. My name is Melissa Urias, and I am the Director of Princeton Human Services. This webinar is co-sponsored by Unida Latina Nación, Latin American Legal Defense and Education Fund, and Harrington King English Immigration Nationality Law Firm. I would like to introduce our panelists for today. We have John Highlander with LALDEF and the Princeton Human Services Commission, attorneys Ryan Lilienthal and Eileen King with Harrington King English Immigration and Nationality Law Firm, and attorney Sue Roy with the Law Office of Susan G. Roy. We also have Maria Huega, who will be interpreting the session in Spanish. We will have a time for Q&A towards the end. During the Q&A, please type your questions into the chat and the attorneys will respond. Buenas tardes y gracias por acompañarnos en esta sesión informativa para hablar sobre la reciente decisión de la Corte Suprema sobre DACA. Mi nombre es Melissa Urias y soy la directora de Servicios Humanos de Princeton. Esta sesión informativa está copatrocinada por Unida Latina Nación, LALDEF y el bufete de abogados Harrington King English Immigration Nationality. En este momento me gustaría presentarles a John Highlander del Subcomité de Inmigración de la Comisión de Servicios Humanos de Princeton y de LALDEF, y los abogados de inmigración Ryan Lilienthal, Eileen King y Sue Roy. Tendremos tiempo para preguntas y respuestas hacia el final. Durante las preguntas y respuestas, escriba sus preguntas en el chat y los abogados responderán. Tendremos a la señora María Huega, que interpretará la sesión en español. All right, Ryan, you can take it away.
I'm going to let John just jump in and introduce himself also and just talk about a little bit about LALDEF services.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Melissa, for organizing this. Thanks, Ryan, for coming up with the idea to do this. So I'm just going to say a brief word about what LALDEF, Latin American Legal Defense and Education Fund, is doing and can help with. So we've been in the, we've helped people with DACA ever since the program started back in, I guess it was 2012. And we are helping with renewals. Our thought, but I think the attorneys have already talked a little bit about this, is not to file new applications if you've never had one before yet, because who knows what will happen to your fee. Although, well, Charo can give some more thoughts about that later, she just did. So what we do is we help people. Right now, we're not in our building. We haven't been in our Trenton Chambersburg building since March 16th, but we are doing everything virtually. And if you would like us to help with a DACA renewal, the best thing to do is to text Kati Dominguez, and her number is 609-331-9367.
John, may I ask you to make a pause so I can interpret what you just said?
Sure.
Should I ask if anyone really needs
Let's at least see
interpretation?
whether we need interpretation before we interpret everything, right?
¿Hay alguien que necesite interpretación al español de lo que se ha dicho hasta ahora? Can the attendees respond?
In the chat, or they could just raise their hand.
¿Pueden levantar la mano en el chat, por favor, si necesitan interpretación?
We have one hand.
Okay. Voy a interpretar brevemente lo que acaba de decir el señor John Hallner, que está representando a la organización LALDEF. Ha agradecido a los organizadores el haber organizado este evento y ha querido explicar brevemente los servicios que presta LALDEF. LALDEF ha estado ayudando con el programa de DACA desde que empezó en el 2012. LALDEF está tramitando las renovaciones los abogados van a hablar sobre si se puede o se debe presentar nuevas solicitudes de DACA ahora que se ha decidido la suspensión del programa. Se ha sido rechazada por la Corte Suprema. La ALDEF todavía no está atendiendo en su edificio, las oficinas todavía no están abiertas, pero ustedes pueden pedir ayuda a través de un texto o llamando a la directora del programa, que se llama Katy Domínguez, al teléfono 609-331-9360. Go ahead, John.
Okay. The other thing you can do is you can call our number where it will be transferred to either Kati or one of our legal staff, but Kati would then reroute it. And our phone number, so I'm going to try my little bit of high school Spanish, is 609-688-0881. Is that okay?
Bueno, entonces pueden también llamar a nuestra línea general de ayuda y allí le podrán transferir al departamento correspondiente. El teléfono del ALDEF es el 688-0881, repito, 609-688-0881.
Gracias. So our fee for DACA, we have a $100 fee to help with the complete DACA renewals, but that this will also be a sliding scale based on your family income.
La ALDEF cobra una tarifa de $100 por el trámite de las renovaciones, pero esta tarifa puede ser ajustada basado en los ingresos de cada familia.
And the only other thing I would say is our legal staff, which currently consists of 3 people, can help you with all sorts of other non-DACA things. And there we charge $35 for an initial screening.
También les podemos ayudar, nuestro personal le puede ayudar con otros temas que no sean DACA, y para esto cobramos una tarifa de $35 para evaluar su situación.
Right now, however, while we're virtual, we've actually waived that initial screening fee.
Persona hemos esa tarifa.
And depending on the case, we will either refer you to reputable immigration attorneys, such as the folks on this webinar right now, or if it's something we can proceed with and we don't do everything, then we would talk with you about the fee. And if you agree to that, we would ask you to pay half up front, and we'll work out a payment schedule for you for the rest of the fee.
Si su caso es algo que nosotros no podamos atender, entonces les vamos a referir a abogados competentes como los que están aquí en esta reunión. Y si es un caso que nosotros podemos manejar, le diremos la cantidad que le vamos a cobrar. Pedimos que paguen la mitad y que el resto lo paguen en plazos que puedan ustedes manejar.
And with that, I'll turn it back to Melissa.
Y entonces le voy a pedir a Melissa que siga adelante.
Melissa, you want me to jump in? Okay, great. My name's Ryan Lilienthal. I'm an attorney with Hartington King and English. And we have offices in Freehold, Princeton, and Vineland. And so I'm happy to be here, and I want to thank Princeton Human Services for organizing this, and for LALDEF, and for Sue and Eileen and Charo for participating in this webinar. I'm going to very quickly provide some outline background about DACA, and then I want to move as quickly as possible to the question and answers.
Me presento, mi nombre es Ryan Lilienthal, soy un abogado con el bufete de Harting King and English. Tenemos oficinas en Freehold, en Princeton y en Vineland. Quiero agradecerle al Departamento de Servicios Humanos de Princeton que haya organizado esto, así como las abogadas que nos acompañen. Les voy a dar una pequeña revisión de lo que es el programa DACA y después vamos a pasar a la sección de preguntas y respuestas.
Okay. During the Obama administration, there was lots of interest in passing comprehensive immigration reform.
Durante la administración del presidente Obama había mucho interés en aprobar una reforma migratoria.
But there was never any movement on that, and so President Obama decided to take initiative on his own.
Pero nunca esto salió adelante. Por lo tanto, el presidente Obama decidió tomar su propia iniciativa.
And his effort focused in on children who were brought to the United States without documentation with their parents.
Y su enfoque era en jóvenes que habían llegado a los Estados Unidos con sus padres sin papeles.
The government has the ability to choose whether it's going to pursue the removal, deportation of individuals or not.
El gobierno tiene la discreción de escoger si van a ejercer su capacidad de deportar a personas o no.
And so one power that the government has is to defer or put off the decision of pursuing the removal of somebody.
Y entonces un poder que tiene el gobierno es el de decidir o el posponer la habilidad de deportar a alguien.
Individuals who are individuals who benefit from a decision not to defer removal can then apply for employment authorization.
Personas que se han beneficiado con una decisión de no ser deportados, entonces pueden solicitar un permiso de trabajo.
President Obama made this deferral of removal available to a large category of these young immigrants in the United States under the program Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals.
El presidente Obama hizo posible que una gran cantidad de jóvenes se beneficiasen de esta posibilidad a través del programa de la acción diferida para personas que habían llegado de niños.
And the program is DACA.
Y el programa es DACA.
Now, it wasn't just a gift to individuals. There was an exchange.
Bueno, y no fue un regalo a estos individuos, sino fue un intercambio.
It involved individuals requiring them to come forward and present themselves to the government.
Esto requería que estas personas se identificasen al gobierno.
Going through a biometric screening.
El que fuesen a través de un proceso de de que sus antecedentes fuesen inspeccionados con huellas dactilares.
And putting themselves onto the radar of the government.
Y de hecho ponerse en la pantalla de radar del gobierno.
In 2016, we had a decision in the election to change the president.
En el 2016 tuvimos una elección y se cambió al presidente.
And President Trump decided to rescind DACA.
Y el presidente Trump decidió rescindir DACA.
And the Supreme Court just came out with its ruling determining that while the president may have the power to rescind DACA, he has to follow proper process.
Y la Corte Suprema acaba de determinar que el presidente tiene el poder de rescindir este proceso, pero debe hacerlo de forma apropiada.
And in making its decision to strike down the Trump decision to rescind DACA, it pointed out specific areas where the Trump administration went wrong.
Y al tomar su decisión de derrocar la decisión de Trump, el Tribunal Supremo explicó ciertas áreas específicas en las que la administración de Trump hizo las cosas mal.
So while the decision is really good news, for DACA recipients and prospective applicants.
Y aunque la decisión de DACA son buenas noticias para los que han recibido DACA y aquellos que pueden calificar para DACA,
there remains great uncertainty about what the Trump administration is going to do.
todavía queda mucha falta de certeza sobre lo que va a hacer la administración de Trump.
The bottom line is that the law today
Lo que nos preocupa es que, de acuerdo con la ley, hoy
it's where President Obama left it when he left office.
es que estamos en el mismo sitio que estábamos cuando el presidente Obama dejó su cargo.
And so today, DACA is fully valid.
Entonces, ahora mismo DACA está totalmente válida.
And so the question, the program today is questions that you might have about what that actually means.
Entonces, el programa de hoy es sobre las preguntas que ustedes pueden tener sobre lo que esto significa.
Now, I was going to go through the specific requirements for DACA, but why don't I hold off on that so we can jump into the questions that people might have. And if individuals have questions about the specific requirements, I'm happy to go through those. But I am going to turn the mic over to Eileen King-English to address questions that we've received in anticipation of this program, and then we can go to questions that you have. And then after that, we're going to be able to talk with Sue Roy about developments as recently as this morning.
Bueno, entonces yo pensaba hablar sobre los requerimientos del programa de DACA, pero lo que vamos a hacer es pasar a las preguntas que ustedes puedan tener sobre esto. Le voy a pasar la voz a Eileen para que ella conteste a las preguntas que ya se nos han hecho y después pedirles a ustedes si tienen alguna pregunta más y pedirle a Sue Roy que nos hable un poquito sobre los últimos acontecimientos, incluyendo los que han ocurrido esta mañana.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. It's nice to have you. Thank you, Ryan, for that beautiful overview of DACA and the history of DACA. And thank you, John, for explaining WildDef. It's nice to be with all of you this evening.
¿Cómo están? Buenas tardes a todos. Gracias por estar aquí hoy. Gracias a Ryan por habernos contado la historia y habernos explicado el programa de DACA. Y gracias a John por habernos explicado el trabajo que hace la ALDEF.
So to get right into your questions, I wanted to first start with sort of the big question after the Supreme Court decision, which is, as Ryan explained, okay, DACA is okay for now, but can the Trump administration file a new, better rescission of DACA, and are they likely to do that?
Bueno, entonces voy a contestar sus preguntas. Por supuesto, la gran pregunta es, sí, parece ser que de momento estamos bien, pero puede que Trump salga con otra restricción nueva y que restrinja el programa de DACA. ¿Y qué significaría esto?
So the short answer to the question of can the Trump administration rescind DACA anew, the short answer to that is yes, they can definitely rescind DACA anew.
Bueno, entonces la respuesta rápida de si Trump puede rescindir DACA de nuevo, sí, verdaderamente lo podría hacer.
The more pressing question is, are they going to do that, and what is the likelihood that they might do that prior to the November election?
Pero la pregunta más importante es si lo van a hacer y si es posible o probable que lo hagan antes de las elecciones de noviembre.
My view of this is that although the Trump administration can rescind DACA anew, one of two things will happen. So either the Trump administration understands now that if they issue a new rescission of DACA, it will likely again be challenged in the courts.
Mi opinión es que aunque la administración de Trump puede hacerlo, pienso que dos cosas van a ocurrir. Aunque es probable aunque es posible que lo haga, sería probable que de nuevo, si lo hace, se llevaría de nuevo a la corte.
And if that happens, and if there is a legal challenge, there is I would say, a likelihood that the legal challenge could last between now and the time of the November election.
Y si lo hace y se presenta una nueva demanda en contra de él, es muy posible que esta demanda no se resuelva antes de las elecciones de noviembre.
So I think the take home for this is, if the Trump administration does intend to rescind DACA, their intention has always been to rescind DACA. And I think the Trump administration has not necessarily changed course on whether it's going on its decision to rescind DACA. The question is, when will that happen?
Bueno, entonces lo importante es que tengamos en mente que la administración de Trump sí tiene toda la intención de rescindir DACA. No creo que ellos quieran cambiar su curso, pero la pregunta es ¿cuándo lo harían?
And it will be a strategic question, I think, within the administration of whether to rescind DACA immediately or whether to wait and see what happens in November at the election and determine whether there's going to be, and if the Trump administration then wins, rescind it anew then.
Y entonces pienso que la respuesta estratégica de la administración va a ser si lo hacen de forma inmediata o si esperan a ver lo que ocurre en noviembre y basado en lo que ocurra si ellos ganan, entonces si ganan las elecciones, entonces procederían con la restricción.
So I think the short answer is, we should relish the moment that we have right now, where DACA is still in existence and where we can renew DACAs that were previously in existence.
Entonces, para ser breves, yo lo que pienso es que deberíamos aprovecharnos de la situación ahora y renovar DACA mientras que sigue siendo válida antes de las elecciones.
While at the same time continuing to recognize that those who are recipients of DACA will not have the full protection of the law until such time as there is congressional action.
Y también debemos continuar en reconocer que los que hayan recibido DACA no van a tener la protección completa de la ley hasta que haya una acción del Congreso.
And then I would just ask Ryan and Sue, my other colleagues, if they want to add anything to my analysis of whether the Trump administration is going to kill DACA immediately or wait.
Y entonces les voy a pedir a mis colegas que por favor nos digan si ellos piensan como yo de que sobre si Trump va a querer rescindir DACA inmediatamente o esperar.
Yeah, I think that it's fair to assume that he's going to move as quickly as possible to rescind DACA, in minimum for political reasons to excite his base.
Bueno, pienso que es razonable pensar que él va a querer rescindir DACA lo más rápidamente posible por razones políticas para mantener a su base contenta.
But I agree that the likely court challenges will probably put off the impact of that rescission until after the election.
Pero estoy de acuerdo en que la posibilidad de que se presente una demanda en contra de él probablemente hará que retrase esto hasta después de las elecciones.
And I would just, to to agree with Ryan's point, the Trump administration has shown us over the last weeks and days that its true intention is to limit immigration in all forms to the United States, to restrict legal immigration as well as immigrating without visas. And I think that that's a direct play to the base.
Y bueno, y esto estaría totalmente de acuerdo con el punto de vista de Ryan de que la verdadera intención de Trump es el restringir todo tipo de inmigración, incluyendo la inmigración legal, así como la inmigración sin visa, para mantener a su base contenta.
So let's just.
Oh, I was just going to add,
Go ahead, Sue.
I think it's all going to, not to be the cynical one, but I think it's all going to depend on the news cycle. And when he has a bad news week, like he did this week and last week, that's when he's going to announce it, that he's, and I think it's all going to be political.
Bueno, y yo quiero añadir nada más, y no quiero ser la cínica del grupo, que va a depender del ciclo de noticias, y cuando tenga una semana de malas noticias como esta última semana, que es cuando él lo va a anunciar para mantener a su base contenta.
So let's continue with the questions so that we can get through them. So the next question is, what do current DACA recipients now have to do to request a renewal of their status, and what is the renewal fee? So first, the renewal fee is $495. That's the filing fee. DACA petitions can be renewed up to a year prior to expiration. So USCIS will process them up to a year prior to expiration. In order to renew DACA, you have to submit the DACA form, as well as the 765, which is the application for employment authorization. So it's the I-821D and the I-765 to renew your DACA and to get your employment authorization.
Bueno, entonces la siguiente pregunta es, ¿qué es lo que pueden hacer los que tengan ahora DACA para renovarla y cuál es la tarifa de renovación? La tarifa de renovación son $495 y el Departamento de Inmigración ha dicho que se puede empezar la renovación hasta un año antes de la fecha de expiración. Para hacerlo hay que someter el formulario de renovación y el formulario para un nuevo permiso de trabajo, el formulario 821D más el formulario 765.
So, and I'll just add that although you can renew DACA up to a year in advance, right now DACA applications are actually being processed relatively quickly by the Department of Homeland Security. So we have seen DACA applications within the last month or so that are processed within about a month. So for example, an application that we submitted at the end of April was approved and the work authorization received at the end of May.
Y aunque, como he dicho, las solicitudes de renovación se pueden presentar hasta un año antes, se está procesando relativamente rápido y estamos viendo que hasta el mes pasado, las solicitudes que se presentaban se estaban renovando en un mes. Es decir, presentamos una solicitud en marzo y la renovación el nuevo permiso llegó en abril.
So the next question, there's actually a question in the Q&A, which was our next question anyway, so it's a perfect time to move to that. I think the $6 million question is, are new applications being accepted? And this question says, if they are, my kids who came to the United States in 2010 and 2011, able to apply for DACA, they came when they were 7 and 8 years old. So first, let me answer the first question, which is, are new applications being accepted?
Bueno, entonces vamos a pasar a la siguiente pregunta que nos han hecho en la sección de preguntas y contestaciones, que ya nos la habían hecho, y es la pregunta de los 6 millones. La pregunta es si se están aceptando nuevas solicitudes. Tenemos una pregunta que dice aquí que pueden mis hijos que llegaron en el 2010 y el 2011 y tienen 7 y 8 años, pueden solicitar DACA.
So as Ryan said previously, DACA should now, with this Supreme Court decision, go back to the state and the original state that it was in 2012, which would otherwise permit new DACA applications to be filed. And I'll just note that during this court challenge, although we were able to renew DACA applications while the court challenge was happening, we have not, since the beginning of this court challenge, we've been able to renew, but we have not been able to submit new.
Bueno, entonces, como ha dicho Ryan anteriormente, con esta decisión del Tribunal Supremo, deberíamos volver a la situación en la que estábamos en el 2012 y permitirse el que se presenten nuevas solicitudes. Pero hasta ahora, incluyendo durante todo el tiempo que la demanda ha estado pendiente, no hemos podido presentar nuevas solicitudes.
So, USCIS has not submitted official guidance about whether it will be accepting and the manner in which it will be accepting new applications. So,
bueno, entonces el Departamento de Inmigración de momento no ha anunciado ningún tipo de instrucciones de cómo van a aceptar las nuevas solicitudes.
So we would advise that if you believe that you're eligible for DACA, or if you believe your children are eligible for DACA, and I'll explain what the eligibility requirements are in a minute, then you should speak to an immigration attorney or speak to LALDEF about the possibility of beginning to prepare the application for submission.
Entonces nosotros les aconsejaríamos que si ustedes piensan que califican o que sus hijos califican para este programa, y voy a hablarles de los requerimientos en un momento, que por favor hablen con un abogado o hablen con LALDEF para prepararse a presentar la solicitud.
We are hearing that USCIS has not yet begun processing those new applications.
Estamos escuchando que el Departamento de Inmigración no se está preparando para aceptar nuevas solicitudes.
So they may be accepting them, but they may not be processing them yet.
Entonces es posible que las acepten, que las estén aceptando, pero que no las estén procesando.
We will hopefully be able to get more information about that in the next couple weeks.
Esperamos recibir más información sobre esto en las próximas 2 semanas.
Okay, now I want to respond to the second question because this has a this is directly related to what the qualifications are for somebody to apply for DACA.
Entonces voy a hablar sobre la segunda pregunta, y esto afecta a las calificaciones necesarias para DACA.
So, in order to qualify for DACA, and I'll answer this question specifically, your kids came to the United States in 2010 and 2011 before they were 16 years old.
Bueno, entonces voy a dirigirme a la pregunta específica que nos han hecho. Sus hijos llegaron en el 2010 y el 2011 antes de que cumpliesen los 16 años.
However, and they were present in the United States when DACA was issued in 2012.
Y estaban presentes en los Estados Unidos cuando se creó DACA en el 2012.
However, one of the qualifications for DACA is that a DACA applicant must demonstrate physical presence, continuous residence in the United States between June of 2007 and June of 2012.
Pero, sin embargo, uno de los requerimientos de DACA es que el solicitante debe demostrar haber estado presente físicamente en los Estados Unidos entre junio del 2007 y junio del 2012.
So for those children that came to the United States before or after that 2007 date when we have to show continuous residence, they will not meet that requirement.
Entonces, para los niños que llegaron a los Estados Unidos después de esa fecha, en el 2007, de la que hemos hablado, no van a poder cumplir con ese requerimiento de haber estado presentes en los Estados Unidos durante ese periodo.
Sue and Ryan, before I move on to the next question, anybody want to jump in? Yep.
Yeah, I would just point out that there's another question in the Q&A that's
Yes.
also related to this.
Okay.
Where you have, looks like a qualified applicant.
So your son came to the United States in 2006 when he was 3 years old, and he's now 17. So if that child was in the United States in 2006, which means that there was continuous residence between 2007 and 2012, if that child was physically present in the United States on June 15th of 2012, if that child is over 15 years old, because there's kids every day aging into DACA, you couldn't file DACA until you were 15 unless you were otherwise in removal proceedings. Then yes, that looks like, you know, we would have to do, or an attorney would have to do another analysis to make sure that there's no other disqualifying factors. But if that child is in school, is continuing in school, either in high school or a college program, a GED program, military, then there's a likelihood that that child would qualify, or at least on that set of information alone, it looks like that child may qualify.
Bueno, entonces sí, tenemos aquí otro caso de alguien que parece que puede calificar. Se trata de un niño que entró en junio del 2006 cuando tenía 3 años y que ahora tiene 17 años. Entonces parece que sí, que él estuvo presente físicamente en los Estados Unidos entre junio del 2007 y junio del 2012 y puede probar esto y tiene más de 16 años, lo cual parece que cumple y está en la actualidad inscrito en una escuela secundaria o en un programa de educación equivalente o en el ejército, aunque tendríamos que ver otros factores, él debería consultar con un abogado porque parece que en principio, basado en estos factores, sí calificaría.
So I think I got both of the answers that were in the Q&A. I'll just move on to the next question, which was, I have, hang on for 1 second, let me just go to it. I never applied for DACA before, but I think I'm eligible. What's the fee for the first time? So again, that goes into new DACA applications that we were speaking of before. Fee remains $495. And if you think you're eligible for a new DACA, I would advise to reach out and get some legal assistance to make sure that you actually qualify.
Bueno, entonces vamos a seguir a la siguiente pregunta, pues que ya he contestado las dos preguntas que aparecen en el chat. La siguiente pregunta es, pienso que yo califico para DACA, pero nunca lo solicité. ¿Cuál es la cuota? Bueno, la cuota son $495, como hemos explicado. Si usted piensa que califica, debe buscar ayuda legal y determinar si debe solicitarlo.
Next question is...
Oh, Eileen, I just wanted to jump in for 1 second. And could
Yeah.
you please tell the audience what the effect of a DACA recipient or someone who wants to apply for a DACA, the effect of a DWI?
Oh, I would love to.
Yes.
I actually don't love to, but I will tell you.
Bueno, Eileen, ¿podrías explicarle a los que nos escuchan el efecto que tendría en un solicitante de DACA o alguien que tenga DACA? ¿Qué efecto tendría el hecho de manejar bajo la influencia? Sí, claro, me encantaría hacerlo. Bueno, no me encantaría, pero creo que es importante.
So, you will not be eligible for DACA if you have been convicted of a felony, a significant misdemeanor, or if you've been convicted of 3 or more other misdemeanors.
Bueno, usted no calificaría para DACA si ha sido declarado culpable de un crimen serio o de un crimen menor importante o si ha sido declarado culpable de 3 o más crímenes menores.
The biggest one that we see in New Jersey is a DWI or DUI. And although that is not considered a crime in New Jersey, it has been, it has the effect of absolutely making it so that the DACA application will not be approved.
Bueno, en lo que vemos más frecuentemente es el manejar bajo la influencia de sustancias. Aquí en New Jersey no es un delito, sin embargo, tiene el mismo efecto de un delito y si el que lo tenga no puede calificar, no va a calificar para DACA.
USCIS has taken the position that it qualifies as a significant misdemeanor, and it will deny DACA on if you have one DWI.
El Departamento de Inmigración ha tomado la posición de que esto constituye un delito menor importante y que van a denegar el DACA.
I would suggest that if you have a DWI and you're looking to either file DACA for the first time or renew your DACA, that before you do so, you would speak to an attorney about the possibility of going back to municipal court on that DWI to see if anything can be done to downgrade that to a reckless driving or something else that is not an alcohol-related offense.
Entonces, si usted ha sido declarado culpable de un DWI o manejar bajo la influencia y está pensando en solicitar DACA por primera vez o en renovarlo, les aconsejamos que consulten con un abogado para ver si merece la pena regresar al tribunal municipal y ver si se puede hacer algo para rebajar los cargos a otros cargos como manejar de forma negligente o peligrosa, pero que no involucre el uso de alcohol o drogas.
And if you've never applied for DACA and you have a DUI or DWI, I would strongly urge you to seek legal counsel before submitting that petition, before submitting that application, because foreign nationals with DWIs have been a priority for removal in the current administration.
Y si usted nunca ha solicitado en DACA o ningún tipo de proceso migratorio, antes de hacerlo le sugeriría que por favor consulte con un abogado, porque de hecho personas que tienen este problema son una prioridad para el Departamento de Inmigración en cuanto a deportaciones.
So the next question was actually the next question, which is, if my DACA has expired in the past and I haven't maintained continuous DACA status, can I still renew my DACA? And the answer is yes.
Bueno, y la siguiente pregunta es si mi DACA ya ha expirado y no he mantenido mi estatus de forma continua, ¿puedo renovarla aún? Y la respuesta es sí.
As long as the applicant still qualifies and can demonstrate that there have been no other criminal arrests or nothing else that would deem the person ineligible, yes, you can apply for DACA even if your DACA is expired.
Siempre y cuando no ha habido, la persona todavía califica, cumple con las condiciones, no ha habido ningún tipo de arresto, puede hacerlo y puede solicitar la renovación.
That would be considered a renewal, not a new application.
Esto se considerará una renovación, no una solicitud nueva.
The next question has to do with advanced parole and whether advanced parole can be requested for new DACA.
La siguiente pregunta está relacionada con el permiso de viaje y sobre si esto se puede pedir con una nueva solicitud de DACA.
Before the challenges in court, DACA recipients were permitted to request advanced parole, which would permit them to travel if they could demonstrate emergent reason for travel.
Antes de que se suspendiera DACA, los solicitantes podían solicitar un permiso para viajar si podían presentar pruebas de una razón de emergencia.
My viewpoint on this is that at this point in time, particularly with the current administration, I would not suggest that any of my clients travel with advanced parole or apply for advanced parole at this point until we have a further determination of how this is going to work. I would be much too concerned that first of all, I'm not sure that advanced paroles are even being issued. And even if they were, I would have grave concerns about permitting my clients to travel with advanced parole on DACA.
Bueno, entonces yo por mi parte sugeriría que no le sugeriría a ninguno de mis clientes que viajen con un permiso de viaje o que lo solicitasen hasta que haya una determinación por parte del gobierno. Estaría muy preocupada y en primer lugar no creo que estos permisos se estén emitiendo, pero tendría mucha preocupación con cualquiera de mis clientes que saliese del país bajo estas condiciones hasta que haya una determinación más clara por parte del gobierno.
I've been talking for a long time. I think I actually got to all of the questions, and I think that a lot of the questions asked were questions that we had already planned to cover, so that's great. Ryan and Sue, anything that I missed that I need to cover?
The only thing that I'd say, and it's not related to the substance here at all, is kind of amplifying what you said about getting legal guidance. A lot of what you're looking at now is strategizing and trying to make informed decisions. For one type of individual, they may view, I've never applied before, I'm willing to take the risks. I recognize I'm going to be spending money on the filing fee, an attorney, and I understand whatever the risks are in my case, but it's really important. And then someone else might have a very different decision.
Right.
It's really important to get an individualized guidance from an attorney, and both because kind of understanding what the law is, but also understanding the larger context of where a case may unfold and what other opportunities might be available in addition to risks.
Bueno, entonces únicamente yo pienso que me gustaría amplificar lo que ya has mencionado en cuanto a asesoría legal. Hemos estado hablando mucho sobre estrategia. Hay personas que dicen no he solicitado, puedo solicitarlo, estaría dispuesto a pagar la cuota y a pagar por los gastos de abogado, pero ¿cuáles son los riesgos? Es importante que cada persona reciba una asesoría individualizada para que entiendan bien no solamente la ley, sino también el contexto y cuáles puedan ser las otras opciones que tengan.
Completely agree.
Estoy totalmente de acuerdo. Yo también.
And it's not about paying the fees. It's about making sure that you don't do something that could jeopardize your ability to stay here in the United States, because especially if you have a deportation order and you don't already have DACA, because we're so unsure as to whether or not they're going to accept initial filings at this point, I would definitely consult with LALDEF or an attorney, or not someone with a notario sign down in Trenton, please. Someone who's an accredited representative or a legitimate nonprofit organization or an attorney. Any of those would be fine. But the risks are too great right now to leave it to either chance or to someone who doesn't know what they're doing.
Absolutely.
Bueno, entonces estoy de acuerdo en que la gente no debería ponerse en peligro y no es cuestión de pagar o dejar de pagar, sino de que estarían poniendo en peligro su habilidad de permanecer aquí en este país, sobre todo si ya tienen una orden de deportación. Ahora mismo no sabemos, estamos muy inseguros sobre lo que va a pasar. Y les aconsejo que consulten, ya sea con LALDEF, ya sea con un abogado, alguien calificado. No consulten, por favor, con notarios ahí en Trenton, que son gente que no está preparada ni calificada. Hablen con alguien que tenga las calificaciones necesarias, porque los riesgos ahora mismo son demasiado grandes.
There's another question here that says, any estimate of eligible new DACA candidates? That's a great question. I don't know the answer to that, but what I will say is that, children who arrived before they were 16 years old, before 2006, who weren't 15 when this injunction took place, when the stop, when these applications were stopped, which was in 2017. There's been people aging into DACA, turning 15 every single year. Now we have 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds who would otherwise be eligible, and there will be children aging into DACA even after now. If you think 2007 was 13 years ago, we still have a couple more years for kids to age into DACA.
Bueno, entonces aquí hay otra pregunta de si alguien tiene una estimación de cuántos candidatos para solicitar DACA por primera vez existen. La abogada dice, no lo sé, pero pienso que hay muchos niños que llegaron con menos de 16 años antes del 2006 y que no...
Sorry, I think I said 2006, but it's really 2007.
Perdón, me equivoqué, dije 2006, pero en realidad quise decir 2007. Son niños que cuando se paró el proceso de DACA en el 2017 todavía no lo habían solicitado, pero que desde entonces han ido cumpliendo años y que todavía califican para el proceso, pero no han podido solicitarlo. Esto empezó hace ya 13 años y todavía tenemos 2 años más en los que estos niños irán cumpliendo años y calificando.
With that said, Ryan, I will turn it back over to you unless there's something else that I missed, but I feel like I've been talking for a long time. So.
Yes, I thought that was great. I just want to give one moment for the participants, anyone to ask questions related to DACA, because then we're going to pivot to what we've been calling the breaking news, with an emphasis on breaking.
As in heartbreaking?
Yeah.
Heartbreaking, breaking immigration systems. We keep talking about fixing something. Well, this is breaking news.
Does anybody else have any individual questions?
¿Alguien más tiene alguna pregunta que quieran hacer antes de que pasemos a hablar de las últimas noticias?
On DACA.
Sobre DACA.
Okay, it doesn't look like any more questions are coming up. So Sue has been kind enough to join us, you've all been following kind of events, and it's like rapid fire. Sue very quickly, started flagging events as they were unfolding this morning. So she's going to cover some of the late breaking new news, as if DACA weren't new news, but this is newer news of what's happening with the courts and potential impacts. So Sue, you're on.
Okay. I would just like to say hi, everyone. I'm actually involved with DACA too. I mean DACA, LALDEF too. I'm on the board of trustees, and I've actually helped with some of their former DACA sort of Friday afternoon programs. So I'm thrilled to be a part of this panel, and I'm thrilled to be a part of this community. Okay.
Bueno, entonces vamos a hablar con Sue, que está siguiendo todos los últimos eventos que están ocurriendo muy rápidamente, y nos va a hablar incluso de lo que ha ocurrido, cosas que han ocurrido esta mañana. Sue se presenta, ella es miembro de la junta directiva del ALDEF, y ella ha estado muy involucrada en el programa del ALDEF los viernes por la tarde, prestando servicios legales, y ella ha dicho que está encantada de estar aquí.
Okay, so the 1, 2, 3 rapid fire news that's come out this week is all, well, not all of it, because then I'm going to switch back to Eileen for business if anyone has any questions about the new business immigration issues and visas. But the 3 rapid fire events I'm going to talk about all relate to asylum.
Bueno, entonces, 1, 2, 3, las noticias rápidas que han ocurrido hoy. Les voy a hablar de las últimas noticias que son todas relacionadas con asilo, a menos que después queramos hablar sobre las visas de negocio, que le voy a dejar a Aileen que hable después sobre esto.
The first one is that starting tomorrow, a new regulation is going to be in place that will take effect August 26th, as it stands now, which will limit the ability of people who are seeking asylum to file for work authorization.
Bueno, entonces la última noticia que se escuchó ayer y que va a tomar efecto a partir del 26 de agosto limita la posibilidad de obtener un permiso a las personas que han solicitado asilo. Permiso de trabajo, perdón.
Theoretically, it's going to mostly impact new asylum seekers who are trying to come through the border currently, but there are implications for current asylum seekers who have work authorization already, and including that if you get convicted of certain minor crimes, you will no longer be eligible for work authorization or even to renew your work authorization. And if your case is denied by the Board of Immigration Appeals, you may no longer be able to apply for work authorization, even if you are not subject to deportation.
Bueno, entonces, en teoría, esto aplica a los solicitantes nuevos que estén cruzando la frontera ahora, pero también tiene implicaciones para los que ya han solicitado el asilo y ya tienen un permiso de trabajo. Si cometen algún delito menor, no van a poder renovar o solicitar un nuevo permiso de trabajo, y también a los que se les niegue el asilo y que apelen esa decisión.
This, as I said, is not going into effect until August, and hopefully there will be a legal challenge to this before it goes into effect, but it probably will take effect eventually, because the executive branch has wide latitude over work authorization applications.
Bueno, entonces, como he dicho, esto no va a tomar efecto hasta agosto y probablemente de aquí a entonces se va a presentar una protesta legal contra ello, pero es muy posible que esto empiece a funcionar, puesto que la administración tiene el poder de controlar este proceso.
The next, the second punch is that the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Justice have submitted 161 pages of regulations, proposed regulations that are designed to severely limit what is considered persecution, who can apply for asylum, what does it mean to be harmed on something that's protected under the law, and all sorts of other restrictions that if they pass will really, really impact the ability of people to even seek asylum anymore.
Bueno, el segundo golpe es que el Departamento de Seguridad Nacional y el Departamento de Justicia han presentado 161 páginas de regulaciones que han propuesto para limitar el proceso y explicar quién puede ser considerado como perseguido, quién puede solicitar el asilo, quién puede ser considerado que ha sido perjudicado y quién tendrá derecho a ser protegido por la ley, lo cual quiere decir que si esto se aprueba, va a disminuir de forma radical quién va a poder solicitar el asilo.
And then finally, this morning, the Supreme Court issued a decision that was a 7-2 decision, by the way, meaning most of the judges agreed to this, that limits people who have what's called expedited removal orders, which are the type of orders that people get when they're caught within 100 miles of a border and have only been here for 2 weeks or less, generally speaking. They are entitled to present an application to explain why they're afraid to go back to their countries, and that is first evaluated by a USCIS or ICE officer, and then it is reviewed by an immigration judge.
Bueno, entonces esto tiene que ver con finalmente hoy el Tribunal Supremo ha emitido una orden en un voto de 7-2, es decir, la mayoría de los componentes del tribunal están de acuerdo en limitar las defensas que aquellos que pueden presentarse contra la deportación express o rápida, que aplica a las personas que son arrestadas dentro de las 100 millas de la frontera y que están en el país menos de 2 semanas. Estas personas pueden solicitar o pueden presentar una solicitud diciendo que tienen miedo de regresar a su país. Esta petición es evaluada primero por un oficial del Departamento de Inmigración y luego es revisada por un juez.
There was the ability to, if the judge also denied your request to stay in the country, there had been the possibility of having a federal judge review that decision to make sure that the immigration judge didn't violate your due process rights. And the Supreme Court today took that away.
Bueno, entonces había la posibilidad de que si el juez negaba su petición, usted podía presentar una apelación a un juez federal para asegurarse que el juez de primera instancia le había dado la oportunidad de un proceso debido. Sin embargo, el tribunal, la Corte Suprema ha eliminado ese derecho ahora.
So that means for anyone who is, caught coming into the country, not people who are already here, not yet anyway, but for people who are trying to come into the country, stopped at the border, probably detained, they have no recourse before the federal courts. They don't even have the opportunity to present their case to the Board of Immigration Appeals. If the judge says no, you don't have a reasonable or credible fear of returning to your country, you can be deported immediately back to your country without any further review of that decision. And that will also very seriously impact people's ability to flee from persecution in their own countries.
Bueno, esto quiere decir que cualquier persona que es arrestada entrando en el país y que está probablemente detenida no va a tener la oportunidad de apelar a los tribunales federales y la oportunidad de presentar esto a la Junta de Apelación de Inmigración y si el juez que ha revisado su caso determina que usted no ha probado de forma razonable que tiene o creíble un miedo de regresar a su país, usted puede ser deportado inmediatamente y esta decisión ha impactado la habilidad de estas personas de recurrir a los tribunales federales.
So those are all the three bad policy changes that will be affecting asylum that have just come out this week. So you know, again, if you are in any way or think you might be affected by any of these possible changes, you really, really should talk to someone, because you know, your possibly easy work authorization application may have become very complicated. Your ability to file for asylum or may have just become even more complicated than it was already, etc. So, and then I saw there was a question on the Q&A that disappeared. Was, you know, are there attorneys who speak Spanish?
It's
all
just,
of us
it's just
here.
moved over to the answered questions.
Oh, okay. So you told them that, yes, we all speak Spanish. We all have offices who speak Spanish. And of course, everyone at LALDEF has access to staff who speak Spanish. So there's lots of resources out there. So anyway, sorry, Charo.
Bueno, entonces estos son los tres cambios de política malos que han ocurrido esta semana, lo cual quiere decir que si usted ha sido afectado de alguna forma por estos cambios, si su solicitud de permiso de trabajo o solicitud de asilo se han visto complicados por esto, por favor hable con alguien. Creo que había una pregunta anteriormente en el chat sobre si los abogados hablamos español y la respuesta sí, es que todas nuestras oficinas tienen personal que habla español, así como en LALDEF, así que sí hay muchos recursos, por favor, úsenlos.
So, if anyone has any questions about any of that, I'm happy to answer it now. If not, I think Eileen should just talk a minute more about the other changes to work visas and things of that nature, if that have also changed in the last week.
Bueno, entonces si alguien tiene alguna pregunta, con mucho gusto la contestaré. Si no, vamos a pasar a Eileen que hable sobre los otros cambios que han ocurrido a las visas de trabajo que han ocurrido también en esta semana anterior.
Thanks, Sue. I'm cognizant of everybody's time, so I'll just be quick with this. However, there was a presidential proclamation that came out that went into effect yesterday, limiting the ability for foreign nationals who are outside of the United States to enter on H-1B, L-1, and certain J-1 visas.
Bueno, entonces quiero respetar el tiempo de todos, voy a ser rápida. Ayer hubo una proclamación presidencial que tomó efecto ayer, en la cual se limita la entrada de extranjeros que no estén aquí en los Estados Unidos y que tengan un visado H1B, L1 y ciertos visados J1.
Additionally, it extended the previous presidential proclamation, which had suspended legal immigration to the United States through many work categories and some family categories, mostly family members of permanent residents.
También esta proclamación extendió la proclamación anterior que había suspendido muchas formas de inmigración legal que incluía visas de trabajo y muchas categorías de visas familiares.
Immigrant visas, and we expect right now the proclamation has an end date of the very last day of this calendar year, December 31st, 2020.
Y otras visas de inmigración, de inmigrante. Esta proclamación tiene una fecha de expiración del 31 de diciembre de este año, el final de este año.
If you have any other questions about that, we'd be happy to respond to those individually as well.
Si tienen
Otherwise,
alguna,
Ryan, I'll send it back to you.
alguna otra pregunta, con mucho gusto la responderemos. Si no, Ryan, volvemos a ti.
Okay. So while we have a reprieve on DACA, we have some very difficult news in other areas. And I think all this goes to show how, how different leadership makes in this country. And while immigrants can't vote, we can certainly encourage our friends who are citizens to vote. And there's a world of difference that elections make. And right now, we have an administration that's making a lot of individuals, like refugees and asylum seekers who come from places where they're vulnerable. It makes them more vulnerable, or it creates another layer of vulnerability in this country. Whether they're at the border or trying to come in, or whether now they're in the United States and they can no longer work. And it makes the work of organizations like LALDEF and the Princeton Human Services all the more important. I think we're going to see greater demand for your services, especially with individuals who are going to be having a harder and harder time getting work authorization and finding support for the families because they're not going to be able to do it themselves. So hopefully everyone's going to be supporting LALDEF and Princeton Human Services. And I thank Melissa and Human Services and LALDEF for organizing the program and for everyone participating.
Bueno, entonces nada más repetir que aunque hemos recibido algo de alivio en cuanto a DACA, ha habido noticias muy difíciles en otros aspectos, lo cual pone en evidencia que el liderazgo político tiene mucha importancia y la importancia de que todos ustedes, nuestros amigos y los ciudadanos de este país voten, porque esto va a impactar lo que ocurra y hay muchos individuos que son refugiados o asilados y que son personas muy vulnerables y que ahora estamos añadiendo un nuevo nivel de vulnerabilidad, puesto que muchos no van a poder tener un permiso de trabajo. Esto hará que el trabajo de organizaciones como LALDEF y el Departamento de Servicios Humanos de Princeton tengan más dificultades en su trabajo y más trabajo, más volumen de trabajo. La demanda va a subir mucho, va a aumentar, porque estas personas no van a tener permiso de trabajo y van a poder mantener a sus familias. Por lo tanto, por favor, sigan apoyando estas organizaciones. No me queda más que agradecerle a Melissa y al Departamento de Servicios Humanos por haber organizado esto.
Okay. And Sue's noting that we have another question.
I can answer it. So the question is, can you walk us through the process for a DACA recipient to adjust their status through their employer? So my short answer for that would be, there is no way for a DACA recipient to adjust their status through their employer because they're completely different processes and completely different paths. There's no straight line from DACA to adjustment of status through an employer unless the person is otherwise eligible to adjust their status and become a permanent resident through their employer. That would be in my view, that would be a very fact-sensitive consultation that I would have to undertake with a client to determine whether he or she might otherwise be eligible to obtain. When we say adjust their status, we really mean become a permanent resident here in the United States. And I would have to determine whether the person was eligible for adjustment of status through their employer, which has very strict rules and guidelines. The biggest one is, you have to have a legal admission to the United States. And the other one is you can't have been present in the United States for more than 6 months. You have to have a legal status within the United States. There is some nuance for DACA recipients potentially, but there is no straight line path from DACA to obtaining a green card through an employer unless a person is otherwise eligible to obtain their green card through an employer.
Bueno, entonces,
sorry.
esta pregunta que ha aparecido en el chat es sobre cómo puede una persona que tiene DACA ajustar su estatus a través de su empleador. No existe una línea directa para ajustar el estatus de una persona que tenga DACA a través de un empleador. A menos que esta persona califique para una visa a través del empleador. Tendría que hablar con esta persona, con este cliente, porque el caso dependería mucho de los hechos específicos. Hay unas reglas muy estrictas para conseguir un permiso a través de un empleador. Por ejemplo, la persona tiene que haber sido admitida al país legalmente y no debe haber estado presente en el país por más de 6 meses. Es decir, como he dicho anteriormente, no hay una línea directa que permita ajustar el estatus de pasar de DACA a una visa de trabajo.
There may be some nuance there for people who obtain DACA prior to a certain age, but again, that's a very fact-specific analysis.
Puede que haya algunos aspectos positivos para personas que hayan obtenido DACA antes de cierta edad, pero como he dicho anteriormente, esto depende mucho de los factores individuales. Tendría que hablar con esta persona.
And I also wanted to say, because I think this is a misconception among, everybody, most people, that is most DACA recipients, most DACA recipients have no way to become a lawful permanent resident, period, through the adjustment of status process, whether it's through a family member or employment, because of the things that Eileen just said. They didn't enter with a visa. They generally, enter without inspection, and they have unlawful presence. Again, there are certain exceptions, and there might be other ways that they can obtain residency, for example, consular processing, which is outside of our scope today. But I just want people to understand that the whole reason that DACA exists and is so important is because these kids have no other way to get any sort of legal status here in the United States, despite having lived here for almost all of their lives. And that's what the big issue is.
Bueno, entonces quiero aclarar también un malentendido que existe con casi todo el mundo. Todo el mundo piensa que los que tienen DACA no se dan cuenta de que ellos no pueden convertirse en residentes permanentes, ya sea a través de un familiar o a través de un empleador. Porque muchos de ellos no cumplen con las condiciones, que son de haber tenido que entrar con una visa. La mayoría de estas personas, los que tienen DACA, entraron sin permiso y han acumulado presencia ilegal en el país, es decir, han estado aquí ilegalmente más de lo permitido. Puede que haya otras excepciones pero la gente tiene que entender que la razón por la que DACA es tan importante es que estas personas no tienen ninguna otra forma de estar aquí legalmente, a pesar de que han vivido aquí prácticamente toda su vida.
Great. I don't know if anyone else has any other questions. I think it sounds like we're all set. Well, so thanks everyone for participating. Melissa, thank you again for organizing the webinar. And I'm not sure who's controlling the Zoom meeting, but I think we can say goodbye.
Thank you to the wonderful translation.
Oh, Charo, yeah, fabulous.
Thank you, guys. Bueno, gracias. No me queda más que agradecer a todos los participantes y agradecer a Melissa por la organización. Gracias también a la intérprete por su trabajo. Muchas gracias.
Thank you to everyone.
Thank you.
Gracias a todos.